we live in a free country and with consenting adults and people free expression of who and what they are.
On an adult level, I agree with you. I think it does matter what you teach your children.
That's what I'm saying. And so there's the matrix of what you are biologically, how you express yourself, who you choose as a sexual partner. If we actually live in a free country, as we tell ourselves, people's freedom to behave in any of those ways should not concern you at all. Nor are they requiring that you behave that way. Okay? Well, this is for their own freedoms, because we live in a free country.
Today's video is wild. Neil deGrasse Tyson absolutely obliterates Ben Shapiro in a fiery showdown over LGBTQ rights and gender identity. While Ben clings to a black and white view of biology, Neil flips the table with cold, hard science dropping facts from biology, psychology, and sociology like a mic. But this isn't just about dunking on Shapiro, it's about cutting through the noise and exposing why real conversations need depth, not politics. Tyson doesn't come to argue, he comes to educate, calmly breaking down complex human identity with clarity and compassion. This debate? Oh, it gets heated, but Neil stays cool, proving once again that being informed is more powerful than being loud.
Now, what is unresolved here is, what do you do with sports? It's unresolved. And I've followed that closely, and I don't see any meaningful solutions to come down off of that. We know that hormones manifest differently in different people, and just the whole thing with steroids. Steroids are hormones, right? And we rallied against steroids in professional sports because it gives you an undue advantage. So, I've tried to think of what the future of sports would be in the world of a gender spectrum. And it may be, you don't specify whether it's a male or female sport. You just take measurements of what your hormonal balances are. And so you compete based on your hormones. This is thought I had. I don't know. I don't know where it's going to land.
The WNBA won't be in business for very long if that's the case.
It would just be, you'd have to find some way to compete people against each other if you still care that sports is an interesting activity.
I guess the area where it does come up in a non-sports area.
Yeah, tell me, I don't know.
So it would be, you talk in your book about the education of children and teaching children about science. And right now, children are being taught about the quote-unquote gender spectrum, which is not scientifically based. That is a theory-based idea.
No, wait, hold on. People express themselves on a spectrum. So you learn that.
That's a social point, not a scientific point. Meaning we express ourselves
hold on.
Based in different languages. Is that something you teach in science class, or is that something that you teach when you're teaching language?
So whether the fact that people want to express themselves on a spectrum, on a gender spectrum, whether that fact is something you want to put in a sociology class or in a science class, maybe that remains to be determined. But it is a real fact about real society.
So here's where Ben fumbles hard. He tries to cram the entire LGBTQ conversation into a tidy little binary box, as if gender can only be X or Y, on or off. But Neil? Oh, he wasn't having it. He fires back with one simple truth. How people express themselves is real, observable, and happening all around us. Whether it fits into a biology textbook or not doesn't erase its existence. In a truly free society, self-expression isn't optional, it's a right. Tyson didn't ignore the tough stuff either. He openly admitted that things like sports are still figuring it out. But here's the key. He refused to treat complexity like it's a flaw. He reminded everyone that nuance isn't weakness, it's reality. And, oh, by the way, this isn't some fringe idea. Major institutions, the American Psychological Association, the WHO, basically every credible medical and scientific body, agree. Gender is not the same as sex, and it exists on a spectrum. That's not opinion. That's expert consensus from people who actually study human development.
Well, of course, nobody's denying that people identify how they want to identify.
So
the question is, what is the relationship of that to biology? Meaning that the argument is made that trans women are women, for example. And what that seems to mean is that trans women are identical to women. Now, if people want to say trans women are not biological women, obviously that is the case. But people don't seem to want to say that, although that is obviously scientifically true. Trans women are not biological women. Biological women are biological women.
But where are you going with this? What is your what are you trying to accomplish by asking yourself, is it science or is it not science? It's people in society.
But this is a perfect example of an area where suddenly it doesn't matter to say things that are just true. Like, why is it bad or wrong to point out?
I have another way to approach this. I care what is objectively true in the world as a scientist. But let me not say even as a scientist. I just simply care what is objectively true. And science happens to be a pretty potent path to invoke, to find out what is true. And so if people express themselves on a gender spectrum, and that is an actual thing in an actual society, if we have not fully explained that scientifically, that's an interesting frontier to study. If you want to say it's only sociological, then it's the purview of the social sciences. I don't care who studies it. It's an interesting fact about society that's worth learning about. To fight someone and say, it's not biological, it's just it's real and it's there.
Well,
because it's real because it manifests.
But it is real because it manifests, but the question of how to classify manifestation is a scientific question, meaning that, for example, there was a woman over at Brown University. She came out with a study that suggested that there was a phenomenon called rapid onset gender dysphoria, in which a member of a particular group would suffer from gender dysphoria, and this person's immediate peer group would suddenly have an onset of gender dysphoria. This paper was so controversial that Brown tried to pull it, and then was forced to reassign it later. You see this sort of treatment.
That's a different question. What you're asking now is, are there some topics that should not be studied scientifically?
Right.
And is there some taboo? And Sam Harris speaks a lot about this.
Yes.
And I think the concern is, if you study some topic that's a hot button topic and you bring scientific methods and tools to it, we don't trust, I'm interpreting here, I think we as a society don't trust that people in charge in a free country won't try to legislate something that will constrict people's freedoms in the face of that information. I think that's the fear.
So Ben, doing what Ben always does, tried to boil gender down to just chromosomes, like saying biological women are biological women settles the whole conversation. But Neil, he came in with a broader, smarter take. He wasn't denying biology, he was expanding the conversation. Because real life, it's messier than a textbook. People live and express themselves in ways that don't always fit into neat little categories. And that's not a glitch, it's reality. Neil made it crystal clear. If something's happening in society, whether it's gender identity or evolving social norms, it deserves to be understood, not dismissed. Real science doesn't shy away from complexity. It leans in and asks why. It explores. It doesn't silence. Then Ben tried to flex with that controversial rapid onset gender dysphoria study. But here's the catch. That research was built on shaky ground. It wasn't based on people actually experiencing dysphoria. It pulled opinions from parents on anti-trans forums. That's not objective science. That's cherry-picked bias dressed up in a lab coat. No wonder the academic community called it out.
Well, isn't that...
It's a fear.
I mean, and isn't that...
We don't trust our own ability to govern ourselves in the face of what could be some information relative to other kinds of information.
Isn't that a bit of a problem?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it's not. It means it's not a free society. It's not a society of free inquiry, which I think you need ultimately. But yeah.
My general take on all of this stuff, from climate change to gender dysphoria to all of these issues, is bring out the science and then let's hash it out. I think that the problem I'm seeing on a lot of sides
is, what is your motivation?
Why? Right? Why does that matter?
It matters because if you have political power, you could end up creating legislation that subtracts freedoms from people who previously were enjoying the same freedoms as you. The history of that exercise
then make a better argument.
Doesn't end well.
Well, but the history of which exercise? Bring out all the science and let's hash it out?
I'm saying if you bring out all the science and the politicians hash it out, the history of that exercise is a recipe for disaster if it involves discoveries that put people's freedom as defined in our Constitution at risk.
But now you're arguing for limitations on areas of particular study.
No, I'm arguing on we need a way to shield, we need a way to protect people's freedoms in the face of whatever gets discovered scientifically.
So I agree. I think that's what the Constitution is for, is to guard rights from.
But we're always fighting people who want rights are always fighting others who are saying they don't get the rights from the Constitution. This is a daily challenge on the progressive left. It is a daily challenge, right? Here's an example. I forgot how I ended up getting this phone call. It was some magazine that serves the gay community. And they want, I remember why, because they wanted my opinion on, they wanted my opinion about whether being gay was biological or mental.
Right, there's that new study that came out, this vast study.
Or psychological.
Right,
okay?
Right.
And I said, I don't care which it is. Find out what it is, fine. But the answer to that question should have no consequence on legislations or laws. Because, for example, suppose it said it's purely biological, okay? Then you say, oh, that explains it. Suppose it says it's purely psychological. What are you going to do now? You say, well, now you're going to go to the reorientation camps or whatever those are called, where they realign you because they say it's psychological rather than biological. All of a sudden, people start behaving in ways in society that want to constrict the freedom of expression of who and what people are. And that is a danger.
Here we go again.
Now, Ben pushes this
Ben's
very
playing
black
the
and
science
white
tells all
science
card.
should just tell us
He
the
acts
truth,
like once
and
science
we'll
declares
go from there.
something,
But
that's
Neil
the end of the
makes
story.
a crucial point.
But Neil?
What happens after
Neil
truth
flips
is
the
revealed?
script.
How
He asks
use
the
it
real
matters,
question.
especially
What do
when
we do with
history
that truth
shows
once we
that
have it?
scientific truths
Because history
have
shows
often
us
been
over and over
misused as
that so-called
justification
scientific
to limit
truths
people's
have been
rights,
twisted to
not
strip people of
expand
their
them.
rights,
Neil's
not protect
example
them.
about sexual
Take Neil's
orientation
example
is
on
spot
sexual
on.
orientation.
Whether being gay is
Whether being
biological
gay
or
is biological or
psychological
psychological
shouldn't
ever
if
decide if someone
deserves
gets to
equal
live freely.
treatment under the law.
Imagine needing a
Imagine
DNA
trying
test to
someone's
qualify
freedom
for
to
basic
a
respect.
brain scan
That's
or
not
a
science helping
genetic
society.
test.
That's
That's
science
not
being
science
hijacked.
serving
And
society.
we've seen it
That's
before.
science being
Phrenology was
weaponized
science,
by bad faith
eugenics
actors.
was science.
And we've
Now,
seen this before.
trans
Phrenology
identities are being
was
dragged
once
into the same
science.
game.
Eugenics
People using
was
cherry-picked
once
data
science.
to gatekeep
Today,
human
trans
rights.
identities
They're not
are the
asking,
new
how
battleground
can we
where
understand?
right-wing
They're
figures
asking,
are
who can we
hoping to
exclude?
mine science,
Neil hits the
not
heart of
to
it.
better
In a truly
understand
free
people,
society,
but to draw
science should
lines
open
about
minds,
who
not
deserves
close
what
doors.
rights.
Right
Neil's larger
shouldn't
point
depend on
is
how
that
well
in
you fit
a
into someone's
truly
chart.
free society,
Because that's not scientific
discovery
progress.
must
That's
be
just
buffered
oppression
by
in a lab coat
constitutional
disguise.
rights and